today.
We started at Hichni Shoro Lachatzer Balavai.
Someone brought his ox in without permission, and the ox digs, and the owner of the ox is responsible for the damage to the land of the owner of the courtyard, and the owner of the courtyard is responsible if somebody falls into the pit.
Oh,
and I read Rashi, and Rashi said that it's only a case where the owner makes the courtyard public.
Hefker. He
Hefker.
hefkers it to make
He
it
hefkers
public,
it to make it
but the
public.
boar is still there.
And then that's why he's responsible for damage, because now it's a bore in the Rosh Hashanah.
And he didn't fill it up.
And he was supposed to fill it
So I'll
up.
fill it
Right.
up and do it. That's where we were up
Right.
to that point.
That's what
I
we
think-
did yesterday, I think.
okay,
Read
where is
that quickly. So it's
48,
after the two dots. It's near
Memches Amid Aleph,
Ches Amud Aleph?
in the kind of the middle of the page.
near closest to the last third of the page.
Amar Rava.
It says Hichni Shoro Lachatzer. After the two dots. Hichni Shoro Lachatzer Balavai.
Yeah, that's right.
Amar
That's
Rava.
the beginning of it.
It sure looks like about the bias.
There's a
So
Amar Rava.
his shoes.
Amar
So he
Rava.
brings his shore into the Chutz the Balabais without reshus. V'chafer bo boros.
Right.
Shichin umaros.
Right.
The animal digs up the backyard of this place.
Hmm?
So that's called hezek. Animal does hezek. Hashor chayev. Niske chotzer. Balashor rather.
I was going to say.
Bal hashor chayev b'niske chotzer. He's going to be chayev for that nezik. Bal chotzer chayev b'niske abor. And the Bala Chotzer is going to be chayav for the nezik that the board does to somebody else. Why? He could say, I didn't do it. Apugab the Avamar ki yikra ish bor, below shore bor. Not only that, even if his own we don't need to not only where somebody else's shore dug the bore that he's not, but even what it says. The Gemora says a drasha, if a man makes a bore, and the drasha is, why does it say a man makes a bore? Just say, when a bore is made, the guy's going to be liable. No, it says ish. And the Gemora darshan's over there, below shore bore. If the shore dug it, so it sounds like the owner of the shore would not be liable for that bore that the shore dug. So why over here is the guy liable?
Or Hacha.
Hacha over here, Kevin the Islay, the Hayach, the Malaya, the Loi Komalia, since it was behooved him, this owner of the, I guess talking about the owner of the Chutz there, because it's his property, to fill up this bore that was dug by, not his fault, but it is, but he should have filled it up, and he didn't do it. Lokamaya, he did not fill it up. Kaman Bekaria Dami. It's considered as though he himself dug the bore. Says Rashi. Hacha Haven the Islay Lamalia. Somebody want to read that?
Place. It's further up.
It's right by the barbecue spit.
Makme?
Yeah.
Mikame. Delifkare. Daha bor dide hu v'chi efker bit basar hachi nosein tikla takala barusu sharab.
Yeah.
So I don't know what leaf kara.
It's hefker. It's the word hefker. But he has to make it. We established that he made it hefker. That
He renders it hefker. So the Rashi's explaining that the case is that the owner of the chatzir makes it hefker. That this bore by itself.
So run on Rashi. It's a run on Rashi.
Oh,
You have to read
sorry.
those words, Kamma as a continuation of the Hebrew masculine. Haka, here, what happened? Came into Islay Lamaya, since it behooved him, it was incumbent upon him to fill it up, Mikamai Delifgere, before he declared the bor hefker.
That this bor, since it's hefker, it is given. It's part of the Reshus HaRabim, because it's hefker. The bor is part of the Reshus HaRabim.
It was before he hefted it, it was his bor.
What?
Before he hefted it, it was his bor.
Are you reading? Are you explaining, or are you reading
I'm reading
Rashi?
Rashi.
Where does it say it was his bor? Oh, D-Day.
Yeah.
Bor
D-Day.
It was his bor.
His bor it is.
Before it was,
Rashi is explaining
before it was
that since it was his bor originally, therefore it was incumbent upon him to. He had an obligation, since it was his bor,
Right.
to fill it up, and that obligation occurred before any hefker on his part. Become a delifker. Rashi's understanding that I don't know where he gets it from. I don't see it anywhere in the Gemora.
No.
But Rashi's understanding that the guy was mafkir the bor.
well, we try to understand it before. When I first asked it, the concept is, if he didn't, it was Rashi's charge.
One second, Phil. Let's finish the Rashi before we come. V'ki afkir baser hachi. And so therefore,
After he makes it hefted.
And when he hefkered it after
Later
this.
on.
in other words, after what? After he had already become liable to fill it up, because it was a bore that was dug on his property.
It's his bor. No, saying tikla.
No, V'ki afkir baser hachi. So now when he mafkirs it, after having been remiss in his obligation to fill it up, because it was his bor, so now he's going to say, oh, it's not my bor anymore, to try to escape liability. This is called no saying takala b'reshus HaRabim.
Which means?
That's called he is placing a stumbling block, an obstacle, b'reshus HaRabim, in the public thoroughfare, that people are going to be injured.
Takala. That's a very important Hebrew word,
Takala.
because you'll use that if you have a problem with a service and something is not working. That's what it's called, takala. Like your phone line is not working, we'll call it takala of the phone of your service.
The takala means service?
No, takala means an obstruction.
Instruction?
Obstruction.
An obstruction.
Something is not working right. If something's not working right, it's like a hazard. Something is not
telephone
right.
lo tikla, takala. Telephone lo takala.
Yesh takala.
Yesh takala.
Takala b'kav. The
Yesh
line's not
takala.
working and things like that. The line's not working. They'll say there's something wrong with it.
So it's like baya.
It's a bad. Yeah.
It's a baya. Okay.
That has to be fixed. Something that needs fixing, so to speak. Something that's wrong right now. That's using it that manner. But this,
Here the problem is that what we're saying is that he's placing a takala in Reshus HaRabim.
Right.
He's putting something in Reshus HaRabim that people could become injured from. Instead of filling it up like he's supposed to do, he declared it. I don't own this property. I don't own this board. Very nice, you don't own this board, but that's called you placed a takala in the Reshus HaRabim. So you're not going to escape liability like that, says Rabbi. You're going to be liable.
We had a whole question. See, the question on this was, this whole concept is weird in that this ox is coming in without reshus.
I'm sorry.
The ox is coming in without reshus.
Oh, right.
So the ox is coming in without reshus, and that's what we'll have to figure out later why it should work. Right? You said he's coming in without reshus.
Yeah.
Why is the owner going to be responsible? Because here it says the owner is responsible for the damage that was caused.
Right.
And how did the owner get to it? So the question is, did the owner know about it or not know about it to an extent? Because if the owner.
Right, but yesterday we said the owner is obligated, before he declares his property hefker,
right,
to examine his property and make sure there's no bores on it.
Right. So which is why this whole concept. See, the concept. There are two parts here. One is the concept of, you can't say a bore got created, and the owner can't necessarily say he's got a bore on his property, and the owner can't say, "Oops, I don't want to deal with this bore. My property is hefka," and therefore he's out of responsibility.
Right.
And the answer is no, because once he's making it hefka, he's created a bore in a reshus harabim, which he'd be responsible for. So that's one reason why the Baal Chatzar is the one who's Nesker. Because otherwise you would say, why is the Baal Chatzar Nesker? Why is he the guy responsible? It's the Baal Shorten who made the bore, not him. So that's how we're trying to move over the responsibility from the Baal Shor to the Baal Chatzar. Because he didn't fill it up. So that's the main reason going on. The not filling it up.
Both of them could fill it up.
What?
It's not the reason why he's responsible, because he could fill it up. The owner of the shore can also fill it up.
Right, as long as it gets filled up.
Why not tell him to fill it up?
Well, you could, I guess, but the question is, as long as it's not filled up, he's responsible.
Why is he more responsible than the one that did it? Yeah.
But this is it. That's that. So Rashi tries to explain.
It
says it. The Gemora says it. The Baal Chatzar is.
I know that's what he's saying.
And that's trying to. Rashi's trying.
I'm asking your question.
I think Rashi is saying.
Right.
Not because he has the ability to fill it up. You could say the same thing to the other guy too.
Right.
You have the ability to fill it up. You just saw your shore dig a bore.
Right.
Is the fact that it's not on your property, is that a reason to get you off the hook? A guy walks in the Reshus Harabim. Does he own the Reshus Harabim? No, he doesn't own the Reshus Harabim. His animal digs the bore in the Reshus Harabim. Is he going to be liable? As though he dug the bore?
Actually, it says no, because that's the pasuk says an ish dig bore, not a shore dig bore. That's the problem with the pasuk. The pasuk says an ish digs the bore.
Are we going to place an obligation? It's called that he did not dig the bore.
Right.
But now the bore is dug. Are you going to say that he has no obligation to fill it up now? Because it's not his property?
Yeah, but
that would be the question.
Yeah. We actually, but again, the Gemara always talks about two times, and there's always the time of the action, and there's a time after the action. You know, whether or not he had the ability, the time it immediately happened, and the time later on when he had a chance to fill it up and he didn't. So there were two periods of responsibility we could talk about, the before and the after.
No, but again, the point is that at the time that the bore was dug, who could have filled up that bore?
Either one.
Either one could have filled up the bore.
Right.
So the fact that the ability to fill up the bore is not what makes the owner of the property liable.
But the fact that he didn't, he is liable, it says. That's the one that we're reading
Rashi
right now.
Rashi
is saying
that
because he didn't fill it up, he's liable. It's saying that. The Gemora is saying.
The Gemora is saying.
Rashi explaining the Gemora. The Gemora is saying he is liable if he didn't fill it up.
Why is he liable if he doesn't fill it up? So the Gemora says the reason he's liable that he didn't fill it up is because he had an obligation. He did have an obligation to fill it up.
Right.
Why did he have an obligation to fill it up more than the other guy?
Because he made it hefker.
Because it's his property.
Not because he made it hefker.
It was his property.
Rashi says, right? It's the habor didehu. It's called his bore. Now, why is it called his bore if he didn't make it?
He says he made it hefker.
No. Again, you got to read the Rashi like this. It's a run-on Rashi.
Right.
Listen closely. Hacha, here, says the Gemora, Keven de Islay Malaya, he had sinned here, even though he's not imputed to be the digger of the bore.
Right.
Because even if his own animal would have dug the bore, he's not called the digger of the bore.
Right.
Nevertheless, says the Gemora says over here, I'll just get the place here again. Hacha, Keva de Islay Leheach Lemalia. Since there was to him, meaning the owner of the property, to fill it up, and he did not do so. So therefore, says the Gemora, it's as though he dug it.
Wait,
the question that Rashi is bothered by, and he's answering, is why does he have the owner of the bore, the owner of the property in which the bore was dug? Why does the Gemora say that it's his responsibility to fill in the bore?
It's his responsibility because it was his property, and it's his property that he's making it hefker. And once he's making his property hefker, he's turning his property, which he has to check that there's no hazards in, before turning it into a Reshus Harabim.
It's hard to say that it's his bore because he did not dig the bore. It's true, it's his property, but it's not his.
It's becoming his bore when he makes it hefker. It's becoming in order to hefker it, he has to check his property to make it hefker.
Again, everybody's confused about this hefker over here. He's not liable because he made it hefker. He's liable in spite of the fact that he made it hefker. You might have thought that he could escape liability by saying, it's not my bore. I'm going to be mafkirit. Rashi saying, in spite of the fact that he was mafkirit, before he was mafkir the bore, the Torah already puts upon him an obligation, fill up this bore that was dug. And
but if he doesn't,
the fact that he's going to be mafkir after he has that obligation, says Rashi, that's not going to, his hefker is not going to help.
Right.
On the contrary, it's called that he's placed it's called that he's placed a takala in the Reshus Harabim. What happens if somebody digs a bore in the Reshus Harabim? He can't say, oh, that's not my property. It's not my property. No, the Torah puts the bore that a person digs in the Reshus Harabim into his possession, that it's his bore, in order to make him liable. I
see. Sorry about this.
He can't get out of it by making the bore hefker.
Oh, we know that. But I think I'm reading a little differently than this, and I'm saying that I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to find the case.
Yeah.
And that's what this is. What Rashi tried to explain.
Yeah.
That will explain why the Baal Chatzer would be. Where is the case?
Yeah.
Where the Baal Chatzer is liable.
Okay.
And if we didn't have this situation, in this situation, you will agree that the Baal Chatzer will be liable. He can't get away by calling it hefka. He's turned to Reshus Harabim. He's responsible for the Takala and the Reshus Harabim. But if the Baal Chatzer, if we didn't have this situation, and the Baal Shor came in, Shalom the Reshus, without permission, and nobody knows about it, and somebody else comes and gets injured in that bore that Shor dug in his private Chatzer, why should the Baal Chatzer, having no knowledge that the Baal Shor did it on his property because he came in Shalom the Reshus, be responsible for it? So I'm saying this is trying to limit the case as to here's the reason why.
You want to say it's where he knew he saw that
he knew that it was done, and that.
Where do you see that in the Gemora or Rashi?
No, because Rashi's trying to explain the hefka. This is why Rashi's giving the case that it works for. It works for a case where he's trying to hefker his property, and he can't hefker his property without checking it and filling in. So you can't hefker his property and get out of it.
So you want to say, Phil, that the reason that Rashi's mentioning the hefker is because
this is a case
that proves that he knew that the bore was there.
Right. And that makes the Baal Chatzer chayiv unless he fills it in, because he has to take care of his property before he can make the hefker, because otherwise it becomes a Rishus Rabim, a bor of Rishus Rabim that someone creates, you're still chayiv on it. But if otherwise, if he had no knowledge of it, why should he be chayiv that a Baal Shor came in and did it and I didn't see it before somebody else, before he had a chance to do anything else? He just entered my property and did something there, somebody got hurt in that end. Even his own thing, you know, somebody else he gave through shoes to come and got injured. You know, how would he know? So I think that's part of, I think it's limiting the case and not just saying that it has to be the case. Because remember, the whole concept is coming in shel over shoes. And this is kind of saying, how shel over shoes am I going to make a Baal Chatzar chayiv? It's shel over shoes. He did it. It's shel over shoes. Let the Baal Shor be the one responsible for making the board, not me.
Okay. Fine.
I mean, Rashi is trying to say that he somehow had to know about it in order to fill it up. Why should he, that's why he has to fill it up. There's a knowledge of having to fill it up. And they're trying to, you get out of it by having it. It's like, it's not mine, it's choosing wrong.
I don't know. It would seem to me a roundabout way of saying that he knows about the fact that there's a bore there. If that's what Rashi wants to say, because he holds like you that if he didn't know about it, then he wouldn't be liable at all. He could have just said that straight. He didn't have to get into the whole issue of being mafkir.
I think if you look at the Rashi, Hacha Kevan De'isle the Malavaya, it says, Mikamai de Lifkara Deha Bor Didehu. I'm understanding that to say that since he made it hefker, the bor is his.
It's before he made it hefker.
Why would it be that since he made it hefker, the bor is his?
Because when he makes it hefker, he has an obligation to examine the land and find out that it has a bor and fix it. Because he's not allowed to make it hefker and create a public nuisance in the process. Am I misreading that?
I want to try, this is a little hard to go by.
Interesting.
Can we try this Tosfos and see if it helps? Because I see some phrases that's trying to get me understand. I don't know if I have an answer from it, but I want to try to read it. Are you okay try to read the Tosfos there?
Ask the rabbi, don't ask me.
Rabbi, I want to try to read this Tosfos because it does mention the Baal Shor. I want to see if there's some answer on that.
Yeah, I just want to, let me just, before that, I have a note over here. From Rabbeinu Yeshaya. I don't know where he gets it from, but he says, it's mashma shekavanas ha-Gemora shekiven shebal hashor shilem lo domim bigdei lemalos es ha-chafira u'salek es ha-takala. Since the owner of the shore whose animal dug this bore, he actually paid money.
That
this here thing should be filled up, and to remove the takala from this property, the balabais. Mi'ata nistalik balashor mi'maisa shoro. At that point, he's out of there. He's already
Paid his obligation.
he paid.
solves your problem, because
Yes,
if
that
you got
was-
paid, you must know there's a bore there.
Right.
But now, chal achiyuv al balad chotzer.
Right.
Now, there's an obligation on the Baal HaChotzer as a result of the Baal HaShor paying money to have the tekola taken care of and filled up. Now now the obligation is on the Baal HaChotzer to actually fill it up. That's what the Gemora means. That since he has the obligation. So what do I see from what he's saying? I don't know where he gets this from. But it must be he's saying. He doesn't understand how it could be.
But the Baal Shor is off the hook.
Yeah. Why is he off the hook? Why should he not be the one that has to fill up this board? Why are we saying the Baal HaChotzer has to fill up the board? He has a problem with that. So he says it must be, he says. It must be that he paid the guy and said, here, my animal dug a bore in your property. Here I'm paying you money. For one second, the Gemora said that he has to pay him for the damage done to the property.
Right. It says he's obligated, but it doesn't say he actually paid. It says
Now-
he's chayav.
Yeah. Right. Mashma shekavanas Gemora he shekaven shebal hashor shilem lo. Not simply that he's chayav to pay for damages that his shore did, but he paid him money in order to fill it up and remove the obstacle. So at that point, he is off the hook.
Right. He's going in the first part. After he digs it, what the Gemara says, it says, Baal Ashur chayiv b'niskei hachatzer. He has to pay for the niskei of the chatzar. What's the niskei of the chatzar? He created a board.
Right. That's what the Ravid says over here. The Ravid doesn't learn like this. The Ravid bi'er shekaven shabal ashor shilem lebal hachatzer niskei hachafira. He said in the Gemora that the Baal Ashur is chayiv to pay for the nezik. What nezik? He made holes in my property. He dug up my property. So the Ravid says, based upon the fact that the guy paid him for that, it's considered in halacha as though the Baal Ashur has filled it up. He's done his part to fill it up. Right. So you can't have any claim on him at this point.
Right.
So they're all bothered by this question.
Right.
Why is this Baal Ashur? Why is the Gemora saying that the Baal Bor has got the obligation to fill it up? It doesn't seem that the answer is because it's his property. That's not a good enough answer for both the Ravid and both Rabbeinu Yeshaya. What do you mean? So what that it's his property? This guy, his animal dug a bore over there. He's the one that made the obstacle. The only reason why the Gemora is saying that the Baal Chotzer has got an obligation to actually fill it in is because the other guy paid him, either because he's liable for nezik, or it's because he paid him because the bore is now an obstacle and he's got to pay him for it, and he paid him. So now they both say, now that's why the Gemora says he's the one, the Baal Ashur. I'm sorry, not Baal Ashur. The Baal Chotzer, he's the one that's got the obligation to fill it in. So he can't. It doesn't help now to say that it's hefker. He can't say, "Oh, I'm out of here. It's hefker. It's not my responsibility." No, it is your responsibility because before you made it hefker, you already had a responsibility to fill it in, and therefore says Rashi. It's like somebody made a tekola in the Yerushalyim. He can't say, "Oh, it's not my property." The Torah puts it in your property in order to make you responsible to take care of the problem. It's called your property It's called your property in order to make you responsible to deal with the problem. Okay. You want to do the Tosos?
Let's see. You okay with the Tosos?
Sure.
I have no idea where we're going on this. I only saw 2 words to read that.
Rabbi's good on
Ish bor below shore bor.
No, first one.
The first one.
The Ish bor shore bor we tried yesterday. We went someplace else. Apokav the Omar, even though.
Okay.
Ish bor below shore bor.
Right. Okay.
Even though it says that. Koloma to say, within this, Hayolano Liftor Baal HaChatzer, you should be able to make the Baal HaChatzer Pater, because he didn't do it, Ashur did. The Ein Tomar, and if you would say, Kol Shekei, all the more so, the Elo Mi Ma'atnin,
Latinin shore.
If you wouldn't limit it, the shore.
If the pasuk had not excluded the shore from the liability. It's only an ish that digs the bore who's liable. The shore that digs the bore is not liable.
To exclude, if you didn't exclude, there's double negatives here. The shore, Shahar Rui, that would be fitting Liftor to make Pata the Baal HaChatzer. The Baal HaChatzer. You would say, hey, wait a second, because it's not the person himself, but it's sure. The Havile, they immediately say, Chuv Chayuvi Baal HaShor. You would say the Chayuv is on the Baal HaShor. Which we'll be talking about.
So irrespective of the Tosos has a question over here. The Gemora seems to be saying, even though the Torah says that only a man could be liable for digging a bore, but not a shore. Says Tosos, why is the Gemora saying that point? Even if the Torah would not have excluded liability for a shore, in any case, irrespective of that, it would have been fitting to exempt the Baal HaChatzer from liability for this bore over here. Why? The Hamalei, the Mirmei, Chiyuva, a Baal HaShor. We should have put upon the obligation, Mirmei, we should have thrown upon the obligation to the owner of the animal who did do it. What's it got to do with the Baal HaChatzer? He didn't do it, his animal didn't do it, nothing that he has anything to do with did it. Why is the Torah, why is the Gemora saying, it's only because the Torah says that only if a man does it, but if an animal does it, so then there's no liability. What's that got to do with it? Says Tosus.
Right.
Kol Shekain, says Tosus. He should, even if the Torah didn't make that exception in the case of a shore, but it wasn't his shore. It was the shore of the owner of the shore. Okay. Yeshiva.
So there is to say on it, the Hachikam. This is what it should be saying. Hachikam, even though.
Hachikam, this is, I think usually when we say Hachikam,
this is how we should read it?
Yeah.
This is how we should read it.
This is what the Gemora is saying. He's not saying the Gemora is wrong and I'm going to tell you the right answer. He's telling me,
this is what
he's telling us, this is what the Gemora means.
Don't we usually translate Yeshlomar as Toshvus answers his own question?
Yeshlomar, there is to answer. We're talking about the next phrase. Hachika Amar. This is what means. He's not saying.
Here's what it means to say.
This should be the reading of it. Even though the Omamar, even though the master said, people said, Ishbor below shorebor. That's what the pasuk says. Vahaya Rukui. This was fitting liftor to pater Kol Adam, any person, not just the Baal HaChatzer, but supposedly not just the Baal HaChatzer, but maybe even the Baal HaShor, Bavor for a bor, Shekara Shor, that the ox dug, Kolomo to say, within this, Haya Lono Libatar, it was within it, the pata, to make pata, the balachatzer, the Havile,
Right.
that Niz,
How we lay the
the
midrash.
Midrash, to make a drasha on this, made pasuk say from this pasuk, it was below ish bor, below shore bor. That's the pasuk. Zeh shelo yitchayev shumadam bor. You shouldn't shesakara bar. So you shouldn't. It should be both of them. That you shouldn't chayev any person in making the bor that was dug by shore by this ox. Both of them should be, the Baal HaChatzah should be pater, and so should the Baal Shore be pater, because it's a shore did it, not a person. Okay, and now we got to get the reason out of this. Ein zvara lidroshta. It's not, you shouldn't deduce to make this drasha. Elo, rather, kaven de alea limule. Okay, because it was upon them to fill it up. Keman, like the one, the chriya dummy, it's on the one to fill it up, just like it's the one, it's considered the one to fill it up is just like the one who had dug it.
Since he had an obligation to fill it in, it's regarded as though he dug it.
That's the dug. That was the basic. Is this the Nira another answer or a continuation of the answer? Continuation.
It's like it's a
continuation. The Nira it appears that we feel im chafru adam, even if a man dug it, devar a thing, something, chayuvihu, it's come upon him, chayev baal hachatzer. The chayuv is on the baal hachatzer.
No, it doesn't mean davar, the bar chiyuvahu.
Or the bar chiyuvahu, that he's a person.
He says furthermore, even if a person would have dug that bore, a person who is called a bar chiyuva,
he's the one who has the chiyuv. He's chayev baal hachatzer. Chayev is the baal hachatzer. In this case, in the damage caused by a bore.
Nevertheless, chayev baal hachatzer, even though another man dug the bore, and that man is a responsible individual, he has obligations to not damage other people. Unlike an animal doesn't have any such obligation like that. The owner of the animal has an obligation to see that this animal doesn't damage. But the animal itself doesn't have any obligation. But a person does have an obligation.
It's still chayav here.
Nevertheless,
it's still chayav baal hachatzer in the iskei bore.
Yeah.
The baal hachatzer still is responsible in the damages caused by the bore. Va'aleya, it's on. The covenant comes upon him. It's incumbent upon him to fill it up. V'hachofer, but the one who dug it, here's when you said the same thing. Well, Mishalem has to pay the niskei hachatzer for the damages that he caused to the chatzar. So he's so the shrich inyan needs to be explained. So the question here is even the bore shore, even another person came in and dug it.
Yeah.
Because that was the word for a door. Doesn't matter. He's saying you have to pay the person for the damages of the chutzner.
So this is a very good Tosfos to read after what we just read from the other Rishonim. Tosfos doesn't agree with them at all.
I didn't follow the Tosfos.
Tosfos is saying that forget about the. Tosfos is asking a question. Step one, Tosfos asks a question. What's the Gemora saying over here? Even though the Torah says Kikora ish shor bore, when a person digs a bore, and the Gemora says we have a miut on that for a behema. If a behema digs the bore, so then there's no liability. There's no liability. Kikora ish bore, below shore bore. If the shore digs the bore, there's no liability on the Baal Hashor for that bore.
Right.
Right? We have to understand what that means. But that's what the Gemora says. But Tosfos says on that why is the Gemora pointing that out? I mean, because why? Because even if we wouldn't have said that, even if we wouldn't have made a miyut for sure in the pasuk, in any case, the problem is that we should have put the obligation, the chiyuv, on the owner of the animal. One second. Itama kol shekain the iloy mamaitin and shore shahaya roy the tor balachotzer. Kol shekain the iloy mamaitin and shore. Says Tosas, if you'll ask the following question, kol shekain, all the more so, that if we would not have had an exclusion for sure in the pasuk, even without that exclusion of shore in the pasuk, which the Gemora seems to make a big deal out of. What's the Gemora making a big deal out of that for? What's problematic here is that we should have, in any case, exempted the balachotzer. Why? Because we should have put the obligation on the owner of the shore. We should have put the obligation on the owner of the shore. Okay. Answers Tosas.
Hey, what's his question? Can you summarize his question?
Okay. Tosas' question is basically, we should have placed the obligation on the owner of the shore.
Right.
Whatever the pasuk says or doesn't say, even if the pasuk wouldn't have said what it said about a ish and not a shore. So even if we wouldn't have had that miyut for a shore,
It wouldn't change it.
the iloy ma'aitinen shore, if we wouldn't have had that miyut for a shore, it would have been proper to exempt the owner of the chotzer, because who's responsible? We should have put the obligation on the owner of the shore. So why is the Torah saying? Why is the Gemora saying that even though really we should have exempted the owner of the bore, the owner of the chotzer, because the Torah says that only a person who digs the bore, not an animal who digs the bore, is there liability?
Right.
Is there any liability? A person has to dig a bore. Liability when a person digs a bore. An animal digs a bore, no liability. Says Tosas, that's not the point. That's not the point. And so what? And what will be if you won't have that pasuk? Says Tosas, in any case, the owner of the chotzer is not the one who should be liable over here. It's the owner of the shore. He's the one that should be liable over here. He's the one that should be liable over here. He doesn't say why, but he should be liable over here. Let's get to the answer.
So the question is, why in the world will we ever say that the owner of the chotzer is liable?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Is that his question?
Right. We shouldn't say. We shouldn't. More than that, Tosas is not happy with the fact that the Gemora is bringing this pasuk.
Right.
It's not because of that pasuk that we would have had a. It's not because of this pasuk excludes men and not animals. It's not because of that exclusion of the pasuk that's the reason why we would have thought to exempt the owner of the chotzer. It's because we would have thought to place the liability with the owner of the animal.
Right. Okay, I got it.
On that, Tosas says, Yesh Lemar, Hakikam Afugab the Amamar, Ish Bor Velo Shor Bor, Vahaya Roy, Liptor Kol Adam, Ubor, Shikora Shor. Tosas says this is what the Gemora means to say. Because of this pasuk, and the drasha that we have from the pasuk, that it says when a man digs a bore, not when a shore digs a bore, there's liability. As a result of that pasuk, it would have been proper to exempt every person on that bore that the animal dug. Climber, which means to say like this. As a result of that, if we're going to exempt every man, that every man that we're going to exempt, because the shore did, will also include the exemption of the Baal HaChatzer.
Baal HaChatzer and the Baal Shor, both of them. It's any man.
That's not the point of Tosas.
Yeah.
The point of Tosas is not that we're exempting the Baal Ha. Tosas is trying to explain the Gemora. The Gemora is explaining why we would have thought to exempt the Baal HaChatzer. And Tosas is saying, why is that pasuk the reason why? Says Tosas, you have to understand the pasuk and the drasha from the pasuk as follows. Because since the drasha on the pasuk is that when a man digs a shore, there's liability. When a shore digs a bore, there's no liability. So that will also serve to exclude from liability the owner of the Chatzer. Mitoch kach, on account of that drasha, hayalanu livtor Baal HaChatzer. We should have exempted the Baal HaChatzer. He's the one that we're ultimately making liable.
Right.
So he's the one that we're saying, even though there is a basis for saying he should have been exempt, nevertheless there's going to be liability. Right?
Right.
That's the second step. The Havalei, the Midrash, Mipasik said, Shelo Yischayev Shum Adam B'bor Shekora Shul. We should have been able to darshan from this pasuk that no man is going to be chayev for a bore that a shore digs.
Right.
But now he rejects them. You should be able to do that, but now you don't.
Ein svar l'droshka.
You don't pass him that way. We don't deduce that. For us, you should have filled it.
Not with the midrash. So this is what the Gemora is speaking out. Even though based upon this pasuk, we would have exempted every person from liability, whether he's the owner of the property, whether he's the owner of the animal. It doesn't matter. If an animal dug it, no person will be liable. Ain't svar l'droshka. It's not a svar to darshan like that. Ella. And this is what the Gemora says. Since Aleh Lamalia, since
Does it come at the part of the fill? It's Kamma. It's real. It's similar in digging.
Now there's really two things over here. The pasuk is saying that when a man digs a bore, there's liability. When a shore digs a bore, there's not liability. Ein svar l'droshka. It sounds like what Tosas is saying is that the Gemora is arguing with Rabbah, who said this drasha. Who said this drasha? It doesn't say. I forgot the Amar Mar. Whoever Mar is, whoever said this drasha, Tosas is explaining the Gemara to say, Ein svar l'droshka. It's not a svar to darshan that. To say that the man will be off the hook just because the shore dug it. Ella, kevan da alei lamalia, since we put the obligation on the owner of the Chatzer to fill it up, so because of that, we regard it as though he dug it. So we won't be able to get out of liability by saying, well, he didn't dig it, a shore dug it, so there's no liability. No, since he has an obligation to fill it in, we'll regard him as though he dug it. Regard him as though he dug it. Why do we say that he has an obligation to fill it in? The Nira Dafilu im chafru adam. Says Tosfos, it doesn't matter whether a person or an animal dug it. Even if a person dug it. The bar chiyuvahu. It's got nothing to do with this drasha. It's not. Tosfos seems to explain. The Gemara is arguing with the drasha. Even if a person would have dug the bore, chayev balachotzer. Let's say a guy walks in and digs a bore on the balachotzer's property. So that guy that dug it, he's not an animal, but and he's a bar chiyuva. But since he's going to pay for the damages to the owner of the chotzer who sustained those damages, now says Tosfos, that makes the owner of the chotzer liable to fill it in. That's what gives him the obligation to fill it in. So if he doesn't do so, so now we say, we go full circle. We say now it's regarded as though he dug it. But it has nothing to do with an animal digging it as opposed to a person.
He has to get reimbursed.
I think Tosfos is explaining the Gemara over here.
Right, and he has to get reimbursed. Is the final thing that he has to pay. You will feel better.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks.
But I still don't get it.
So long, Phil.
You will.
Shkoya.
I still don't get it. What's the relevance of this bar? So we just said, whether it was a man who dug it or a shore who dug it, it's the same exact thing.
No, but what Tosfos is explaining is that this Mar who said this drasha, he made a big deal out of the fact that when it comes to this case over here, it was the shore that dug the bore. It was this guy's shore that dug it.
Right.
So and the Gemora says that even though the Mar says that when a man digs a bore there's liability, when the shore digs a bore, then there's no liability. Says Tosfos. And then the Gemora says, but really, since he's here, since he's got an obligation to fill it in, it's going to be regarded as though he filled it. It's going to be regarded as though he dug it himself. So Tosfos' question, the Im Tomar, is really the question that you're going to have on the Gemora. Why is the Gemora bringing this point about the shore digging it as opposed to the person digging it? Right. The bottom line is that the Gemora is going away from this whole the Gemora is going away from this drasha. The Gemora is saying the point of the drasha is the drasha is not the drasha is not on the mark. There's no svara to say that because says Tosfos, the Gemora means to say that even if a man different than the owner of the chotzer, a different man, the owner of the shore, he brings this shore in, but the shore is polite and well behaved, and he digs a bore in the bala chotzer's chotzer. Then the Gemara is going to say the very same thing. Since he's going to be liable for that, just like he'd be liable if his shore dug it. Right. It doesn't have to do anything to do with the shore. Even if he would dig it, it'd be the same thing. He'd be liable to pay for the damages that he did to the guy's property by digging a bore in his property. So since he's liable to do that, and he paid him, Tosfos says he paid him. So that's where the Gemara gets to say that it was incumbent upon the owner of the chotzer to fill in this bore, even though he didn't do it. And if he's not going to fill in the thing, he's going to be regarded as though he dug the bore himself. Now, why has he got this obligation to fill up the bore? Tosfos says because the one who dug it, whether his animal, whether he himself, makes no difference. He's going to be liable to pay for it. He's going to be liable to pay for it. So once he's liable to pay for it, and he pays for it, so now the obligation is on the owner of the property that he received compensation for the fact that his thing was damaged. He's going to have to fill it up. We give him the obligation to fill it up. If he doesn't do so, if he simply is mafkirit, it won't help. He'll still be liable. What's a little bit still not 100% clear to me is this in Tomar that Tosfos is asking over here. I don't have that real clear. Tosfos is bothered by the Gemorah's. Tosfos is asking a question on the afagav that the Gemora is saying. I'm going to try to read it again. In Tomar. Right, the Gemora says over here. Rava says, the guy brings his shore into the chotzer of the Bala chotzer, and the guy's shore digs a bore. So the Bala shore is going to be liable to pay for the nesek, and the Bala chotzer is going to be liable for the damage that the bore does. Then the Gemora says, even though we have a statement from one of the Amoraim, Amar Mar, that makes a drasha on the pasuk. It says in the pasuk, ki yichra ish bor v'lo yichasenu. If a man will dig a bore and we won't cover it up, and somebody falls, he's going to be sure, or a chamor falls in there, he's going to be liable for the damage. So the Gemora makes it, even though that pasuk, nevertheless, the Baal Chotzer has an obligation to fill it in, and if he doesn't fill it in, we'll regard it as though he dug it. So based on this, the Gemora is saying, even though we have a drasha that would based upon that drasha, we would not impute the digging of the bore to the owner of the chotzer. Why would we not impute the digging of the bore to the owner of the chotzer? Says the Gemora brings the drasha that says because only a man can be regarded as having dug a bore. But when a shore digs a bore, the man's not regarded as having dug the bore. So to say, there's no liability on that. He didn't dig the bore. The shore dug the bore. He's not liable on that. He's not liable on that. Even though the Gemora says that, even though there's a drasha like that, nevertheless, there's going to be he's got an obligation to fill it in. So Tosfos asks a question on the fact that the Gemora brought that drasha. In Torah, Kol Shekain. Right? That drasha would seem to be that it's brought to tell me that even though it would seem that we should exempt the owner of the chotzer based upon this drasha, says Tosfos, why is the owner of the chotzer, is he dafka pater the owner of the chotzer because of this drasha here? That's the reason why he's pater? In Toma Kol Shekain, the Ilan Matin and Shor. Even if we wouldn't have this drasha, and we wouldn't have a pasuk that says when a person digs a bore, but not when a shore digs a bore. Even if we wouldn't have that exclusion of liability of the shore, we in any case would have exempted from liability the owner of the chotzer. It's not based upon whether the animal did it or a person did it. It's because he didn't do it. It was the other guy's. It was the other guy that did it. That's the point. It's not because an animal did it. It's because the other guy did it. So even if you wouldn't have a drasha that says when a person does it, there's liability, but when an animal does it, no liability. No, that's not the point. The point is not an animal did it. The point is that it was somebody else, not the Baal Chotzer, who dug the bore. Even if Kol Shekain the Elohim Maitinan, sure. Even if this pasuk is excluding liability for a shore digging a bore. Right? So says Tosfos, if you'll ask the question, all the more so. Even if this pasuk would not have excluded liability in the case where a animal digs a bore, that the guy's liable. That's not the reason why. That's not the main point why the Baal HaChotzer should be off the hook. The reason why the Baal HaChotzer should be off the hook is because
He didn't do it.
the Baal HaShor did the thing. He's the one that we should make liable.
Whether ox or man.
But whether ox or man.
Right.
And if we wouldn't have had that drasha, we would have also said, the owner of Chutzer's not liable. It's the one who his animal did it. His animal did it.
So why is there another box? Why is there another digging? Or another? No, never mind. Lost. What was I going to say?
So that's Tosfos' Stam question on the Gemora. The Gemora is saying even though we have this
Need to
drasha,
have this drasha. The drasha is irrelevant. You could take the drasha out, and you'd still know that the Baal HaChotzer should not be liable.
it's not exactly that. The Gemara seems to be saying that based upon this drasha dafka, that's the reason why the owner of the chotzer should be liable. It should be patur. Even though we got this drasha, and we would think based upon this drasha that the owner of the chotzer should be patur, based upon that drasha, nevertheless there is going to be liability.
Right. So what I'm saying is you could leave the drasha out. Leave out what Mar says. And just say the owner of the chutzner is liable. Why is he liable? Because he had an obligation to fill it in. You could skip that drasha completely.
Well, Tosfos is in the end of the day. Tosfos is adjusting. He's saying HaKodesh. This is really what the drasha. This is what the Gemora brought the drasha for.
That's what I'm not understanding.
Tosfos says Yesh Lomar. That's the next step. Yesh Lomar, that we can answer that there's a reason why the Gemora brought this drasha. But we have to learn what the Gemora is saying, maybe not according to the pashtus, let's say. In a certain way we're going to learn. It says Tosfos HaKodesh. But this is what the Gemora means to say by bringing this drasha that it brought. That Afugav, the Amar, that even though the master said bor velo ish bor, when a man digs the bor, velo shor bor, what does the Gemora mean to say by bringing that drasha? V'haya roy, and therefore would have been it would have seemed to us. The Bach takes out the word roy, he puts in doima. It would have appeared to us. I don't know exactly what the big difference is. Bahaya Roy or Doima to exempt every person.
Right.
Of that board, based upon the fact that the shore dug it. Climber. And that is to say like this. It's not really the simple understanding, but as a result of that, Mitoka, Hayalana Liftor Baal HaChotzer. That will also be enough to get the Baal HaChotzer off of liability. We're talking over here about the Baal HaChotzer should not be liable.
Right.
Don't confuse the facts with the fact that, but the other guy, he should be liable. Don't worry about that question. Don't worry about that question. What the Gemora is saying over here is, look, based upon this drasha over here, that Odom is patur, when a shore digs it, that the tour of Adam will also include the Baal HaChotzer.
Right.
He should be off the hook.
Right.
That drasha will get him off the hook.
Right.
Forget about the fact that it shouldn't get the Baal HaChotzer off the hook. Don't confuse me with that point. But it should get off the Baal HaChotzer. He should be off.
Right.
He should be off. Nevertheless, says that, right? And we should have darshan that. The Hamalei the Midrash be plus exempt. Shelo Yishayev Shum Adam B'Bor Shekor Shur. Based upon this pasuk, there wouldn't have been any liability for any man when a shur digs the bor.
Right.
On that, Tosfos says, Ein Svara. Not Tosfos. Tosfos is explaining what the Gemora is saying.
What does that mean?
I understand that means that the Tosfos explained that the Gemora is saying Ein Svar L'Koshka. That's not the way to read the drasha on the Gemora.
What?